So today we are going to learn about flowchart. So I'm going to, before we learn about flowchart, we need to know why we need them. So let's talk about computer first. So computer is something that receives command and then it performs the task. But funnily enough, it does not know how to decide things. So humans, they have to tell the computer what to do exactly, like step by step. For example, if your mom send you to a shop and asks you to buy a pen, and like let's just say she told you to get a black pen of a certain brand, and if you didn't find it, you're just going to buy another one. So you are deciding by yourself. But if the same thing happens to a computer, the computer is going to go and see that that brand is not available and it's going to come back empty-handed. So basically what I'm trying to say is that computer follows exactly what you tell it to do. So for example, if we wanted to change the tire of a car, so what we have to do, we have to exactly tell the computer what to do. For example, here we're going to say start, and here we're going to say remove the screw, and then we're going to say remove the tire, and then next step we're going to say change the tire, and then for the next step we're going to say put the screw back on, and then finish. So I hope you understand. With flowchart we explain the steps, like exactly how the computer is going to be working. So that's why we need flowchart. We also need algorithm and pseudocode, but for now let's just focus on flowchart and understand it first, and then we're going to move on to those later on if necessary. So flowchart has some rules and we are going to talk about them. So we are going to talk about the basic components of the flowchart. So we have got this round like oval shape, and it is called terminator box or start box. So what it does is it represents the beginning or the ending of a flowchart. So if we were to go back and see the flowchart, it starts with an oval and then ends with an oval. So that like start and end is going to go into the oval, and then we've got output box, and it represents the input or the output operation of a flowchart. So if you were to give an input or the output is going to be put inside a parallelogram, and it's called input or output box. And then we have process box. It represents the process, for example addition, sum and calculation. So before, like if you think back, we talked about input and output, and whatever we put in is the input, and whatever we get back is the output, and whatever happens is the process. So here we have the same methodology. So here we are going to start, and here we're going to end, and here is going to be the input, and here is going to be the output, and in the middle that's going to be the process. So we are going to now talk about specific problem or like specific example. So let's do that. Here we have a flowchart. And it is a flowchart for adding two numbers. So how are we going to start? We're going to start with this oval and then write start on it, and then we're going to end with an oval and it says end. And then for input, let's say we are going to make a program that is going to add two numbers. So for one number we're going to say a and we're going to call the second number B. So here we're going to give the input, and then this is the calculation. The calculation happens inside this process box. So we're going to write sum is equal to A plus B, and then the computer is going to process that, and then it's going to do the output as it's going to show it on the screen, and it's going to say display sum, and then that's the end. And one important thing I have to mention is that when we are writing the flowchart, the symbols are important. If you draw a parallelogram instead of a rectangle when we're working on process, you're just going to get it wrong, because the flowchart, it follows some specific rules, and you have to draw them accordingly. For example, parallelogram has a different meaning, and then rectangle has different meaning, and oval has different meaning. And another thing I have to mention, that you have to put the downward arrow. So there are other cases where we put different arrows, but for now we're just going to work with the downward arrow. So from start we go to the next step, we represent it with a downward arrow, and then next one downward arrow, next one downward arrow. So this was a flowchart for adding two numbers, number A and number B. And if we go to the next one, we're going to have a flowchart that performs the job of finding out average of three numbers. So like usual, we're going to start, and then we're going to input A, B, C. For example, when I say input, it means that the computer is going to ask you for three numbers. So we can give them like 5, 10, and 20. So three numbers, you're going to type them inside the computer, and then the computer is going to do this calculation over here. So it says average equal A plus B plus C, and then divided by 3. So what the computer is going to do is that it's going to take your number 5, 10, and 20 and divided by 3, and then it's going to show the results here, and in the output box, and it says display average, and then we have the end. So that's how simple it is. And you might think why we are going through all the trouble to find average of three numbers, but it is important that you know that flowchart, these are actually the basics, and flowcharts can get really complicated when you're programming. So this is actually the first step of learning how it works. So in the future you're going to maybe do more complicated flowchart and understand it better, but for now it's just like baby step towards programming. And if you learn how to do the basics, you are going to be able to do programming and understand programming very well. So please be patient and learn it properly, because I'm sure it's going to be useful, and you're going to see that how useful it's going to get in the future. So that's the basic for flowchart, and hope you understand well. And if you don't, feel free to write your question in the comment section. I'll try to reply to that. So that's it for today. Bye bye. So one quick disclaimer, there are fields in technology that are called artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. So in those fields, the scientists are trying to develop programs that can actually take decisions on their own. So Like, that's something to keep in mind.